You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Tell us about the backlash situation, first of all.
Yeah, so the Duke and Duchess of Sussex visited a local food distribution centre, handing out food parcels to those who have been displaced or emergency service workers as well. And they happened to be captured by a local news crew. I think it was a Fox news crew. It's part of World Central Kitchen. That's a charity that they have supported for a number of years now, who've been doing this food distribution things. Whether or not it was a photo op, it's really unclear. I don't think we're ever going to get the answer to that. They didn't look like they were made up to look glam for the television. It looked genuine, but of course we know Meghan is an actress as well. So I'll let you make up your own mind on that one. But then we found out very late last night that the Duchess has asked Netflix to postpone her new lifestyle programme, and the Duchess has released a statement actually, and she says, "I'm thankful to my partners at Netflix for supporting me and delaying the launch as we focus on the needs of those impacted by the wildfires in my home state of California." She thinks it would be inappropriate to launch a glossy programme where she's in a $5 million mansion cooking food. It's an 8-part series, and hopefully by that time these fires will be well and truly extinguished.
Well, they're also getting criticism in the US as well from Jason Bateman's sister, that's the actor, talking about that photo opportunity that people are calling it, saying that Meghan Markle and Harry are no better than ambulance chasers and they're disaster tourists.
It is difficult, isn't it, for Meghan and Harry trying to find their place in the world. Are they media, entertainment personalities, celebrities, and doing Netflix and all the rest of it? Or are they going to be humanitarian workers like perhaps being members of the royal family would be? And I think at the moment they're kind of straddling those two different worlds, aren't they?
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good evening, I'm Josh Howie. This is Free Speech Nation. Join us for PayPal debanking, cancellations from the music world, the view of UK free speech from the US, taking the government to court and Wikipedia bias, and comedians answering some crazy culture developments from a live studio audience. But first, the news.
Josh, thank you, and good evening. The top story: Sir Keir Starmer says the release of 3 hostages from Hamas captivity, including British citizen Emily Damari, is wonderful news after months of agony for them and their families. Foreign Secretary David Lammy has also welcomed their release. He said, "Our thoughts are also with those still waiting to be reunited with their loved ones." Earlier today, the Red Cross said that all 3 released hostages were in good health. Emily's mother has thanked everyone who never stopped fighting for her throughout this horrendous ordeal. She says her daughter is finally home. And a photograph has since been posted on X of the 2 of them together since her release. There were chaotic scenes in Gaza City as the 3 female hostages were released after more than 470 days in captivity. Along with 28-year-old Emily's release today are 2 other named hostages, 24-year-old Romy Gonen and 31-year-old Doron Steinbrecher, who were also freed today. The Israeli Prime Minister's office says 4 other living hostages will also be released in 7 days' time. As the hostages were released after 15 months, there were cheers and tears from crowds in Tel Aviv. There are still many others yet to be released at a later stage. In response to the ceasefire being enacted earlier today, terror group Hamas fighters gathered in Gaza in order to celebrate. Videos released from the region show members of the Hamas armed wing chanting and celebrating as the delayed truce came into effect this morning. Aid trucks have been entering into Gaza since the ceasefire was enacted. Displaced Palestinians have begun returning to their homes, and 90 Palestinians will reportedly be released today. In other news, tomorrow will mark the inauguration of President-elect Donald Trump as he makes his return to the White House. The soon-to-be 47th president arrived in Washington last night, where he took in a fireworks display with his wife, Melania. Trump will also host a Make America Great Again rally in around an hour's time in downtown Washington, although a counter-rally also took place yesterday, with thousands of people attending to protest the incoming president. Ahead of Donald Trump re-entering the White House, Keir Starmer has recently appointed Lord Peter Mandelson as the British ambassador to the US. And despite reports suggesting that Trump may still reject that appointment, Chief Secretary to the Treasury Darren Jones says this is a positive step for improved relations with the US.
Peter Mandelson is a senior and experienced politician that's worked on the world stage as well as we all know, extensively at home here in UK government. And he will be a brilliant ambassador for us in the United States. And look, this is the first time in 50 years that a British Prime Minister has picked a politician to be our ambassador in the United States. We want to do things differently. Our diplomats have done a brilliant job, including Karen Pierce. But Peter Mandelson is a senior and respected politician with a lot of experience on trade and trading relationships between countries around the world, and I think that sets the type of relationship that we want to have going forward with the new administration.
And those are your headlines. I'll be back in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome to Free Speech Nation, where we take a look at culture, current affairs and politics, and when they are being a bit silly, we push back against them. If the world returns to normal, then one week we might struggle to fill the show, but it's certainly not this week. So join us as coming up tonight. We'll be joined by the founder of the parent group Us For Them, Molly Kingsley, who was debanked after she spoke out against school closures during the COVID pandemic. We'll be joined by a jazz artist who claims he was forced out of his job for wrongthink. You don't want to miss that. And we'll be joined by the founder of the Free Speech Union, Toby Young, who is telling us about the Free Speech Union's latest battles with the Department for Education and Wikipedia bias. And of course, myself and my fantastic panel will be answering questions from our wonderful studio audience. My comedian guests this evening are Jonathan Cogan and Steve N. Allen. Welcome.
Hello, Josh. How you doing?
Touching
How you doing?
Thank you. And our audience here, thank you. Yes, so a big week. Obviously, we just saw in the news that the 3 of the hostages are alive and have been returned to their families. I don't know the vibe but I get from the Jewish community is just around the world is just immense relief, right? It's just the last few days we've just been waiting with bated breath. And,
yes, absolutely. And, you know, hopefully we'll see many more returned alive and well.
Hopefully, exactly. Now, Steve, obviously you're not Jewish, you don't care about this kind of stuff.
I think you're going to open with TikTok. Why are we talking about this?
Yeah, I know, crazy. Sorry about that. But you had a good week?
Oh, yeah, I've had a great week. Yeah,
Okay.
It's Thursday, yeah. But I mean, also on that topic, though, the fact that all it took was this threat of, like, if it's not done by the Trump deadline,
absolutely.
It feels like it could have been done earlier.
It does feel like that. But anyway, I'm just relieved that they're home. Right, we're going to have some questions now from our audience. Our first question's from Mike. Hey, Mike.
Hi, Josh. Is this really the end of TikTok in the United States?
Yeah, I know. Very sad news. I saw your latest dance video. It was wonderful, by the way. Got some moves, Mike. So is this the end of TikTok in the US? TikTok stopped working in the US late on Saturday, shortly before a federal ban on the app was due to take effect because of fears over its links to the Chinese government. The US Congress passed a law in April mandating that TikTok's parent company must sell to a non-Chinese owner or face a total shutdown, and it failed to do so. However, Donald Trump said on Saturday he would most likely give the app a 90-day reprieve from the ban after he takes office on Monday, keeping hope alive for users across the states. So it's actually back up and running now, which I'm sure you're incredibly relieved for that. Are you on TikTok? I'm not, because I don't want to be ageist. No. I'm not saying you're old.
No.
But you're old.
And, not very old.
Not very old, no.
Old.
There's a cut-off, I think. You can only be on it from 8 to 16.
I don't get the winter fuel allowance. So
you don't get the winter... Oh, wow.
No one does anymore. Come on.
Look at you with your humble brags. But do you think this is a free speech issue, government stepping in to close down social media platforms?
Yes, I do. But with Trump's record of compliance with the law, I think it will be up and running fairly soon.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you came through. You told me I was very relieved that TikTok were back up and running. Yeah. What do you think about all this?
I mean, I was worried for all those Gen Zs in America. Where would they go to for their short videos other than Reels on Instagram, and the same's on Facebook, and X's videos are a bit like that now. But other than YouTube Shorts, and Clapper, if it weren't for that, and about 15 other apps, then yeah, exactly. How are you going to get your messages out there? And that message is, I can eat a Tide Pod or whatever stupid things they do. Yeah. So, you know, yeah, it's free speech.
Yeah, it's a strange one, Jonathan, because obviously, well, the funny thing is that there are a lot of people, a lot of influencers have gone to this other Chinese social media platform called Little Red Book or something.
I think that's another app, Josh.
Anything ever.
Yeah, well, I mean, that app, you have to send your DNA to, like, Beijing's doorstep. That's a very sort of extreme, you know, Chinese, everything's in, I think, Mandarin. It's very different to TikTok, but I'm not sure TikTok is definitely going to come back. Did you say it's back today?
It's back.
It's back
it was
already.
a self-imposed going dark. It wasn't back. There was no ban.
Right.
It was going to come into...
Right,
but
there was a little pop-up which said, like, oh, Trump's going to help us, please, and I don't know if he will.
Did you just do a Chinese accent on air?
No.
Chinese.
It was Indian. Anyway, so, yeah, I just, you know, I'm just not very good, but I am trying to perfect my Indian accent. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. Like, in principle, I think it should be, if people want to use it, it should be free to run, even if it's maybe a security threat. But sort of emotionally, I just want it buried. I want it gone. But that's not up to me yet.
We'll have to see what happens. Yeah, well, obviously, it's the story.
Oh, Elon's going to bring back Vine, apparently. That's what I heard.
Really?
Yeah.
That's the name. Okay, fine, all right. Right, well, let's move on to our next question. Is from Gavan. Hey, Gavan.
Yeah, good evening and Happy New Year to you all.
It's too late to say that, Gavan.
What? Because I'm Chinese?
Too late.
Because I did a Chinese accent.
It's March. Come on, mate.
He's talking about Lunar New Year.
Anyway, my question is why has a German prison made global headlines this week?
Because they're all freaks.
This is a crazy
The Germans,
story.
not the...
Gavan, I really like your Christmas present there. Where did you get it?
I got it last year.
I got it last year. Was it a family member gave it to you?
No, I got it when you did the election night.
Okay, fine. Oh, you got it for free, is what you're saying?
No, I had to pay for it.
Anyway, it suits you. It suits you.
Thank you.
I've got the same, but underwear.
Just a picture of Nigel on the front.
So this is why has a German prisoner made global headlines this week? Because, yes, a German neo-Nazi has legally changed his gender in an attempt to be transferred to a women's prison. Sven Leibich, convicted last year of inciting hatred and defamation, has made use of recent reforms to Germany's self-determination laws, which allows for people to officially change their name and gender without a psychiatric assessment. Now living under the name Mahler, a local newspaper reported that all this has changed, all that has changed, I believe, about his appearance is he's got a slightly longer beard. So
women don't shave.
You know, if you've seen, that's in some German women, that is very that's very normal. So no judgment there. What do you think about this, Gavan? Because when these laws were put through, feminists, actual feminists who fight for women's rights, basically said, guess what? Men will use these self-determination to these laws to actually play the system, which is, of course, what we've just seen happen, right?
That is a very good question, and...
Well, you're welcome. OK. So private about it. But this is exactly what we saw playing out, right? Yeah. Everybody said people are going to... Bad faith actors are going to come in and use this for their own ends, their own means, one of the other. And...
Are you telling me the beautiful Isla Bryson...
Exactly. And this is happening now in Germany because these laws only just got put through in a couple of months.
I mean, it doesn't matter which side of one debate you're on, whether you are gender critical or such a trans supporter, you should hate this. This is not about trans people. This is about blokes using a loophole, isn't it? And
so you're saying they're not a real trans person?
Do you know what? Maybe I'm going out on that limb. Maybe, I know.
What is a real trans person?
I wouldn't want to badmouth a German neo-Nazi, but I think I'm going to go in on this one, if you don't mind. But, I mean, you've either got to close the... it should be close the loophole, right? That would make sense. Or make them double down on it. If you want to do this, you've really got to lose the bits. You know what I mean? Commit to the bit. Commit to not...
I would like to volunteer to remove his bits.
Well, there you go. Is it? That'd be a nice gift.
Would your
option would be just say, OK, you can go into a trans women prison and tell all the men to do this. So it would basically just be a man's prison with more tights, I guess. Either way, I'm just coming up with some...
Like Olympic swimming. I get you.
A bit like that.
Okay,
yeah, what do you think about this? I mean,
I think it's great.
Frustrating. You think it's great?
Yeah, what's the story? No, I mean, yeah, it's the obvious...
Lewis.
Yeah, I'm ready really channeling him today. I think it's the lost my medication. So basically, I think it's the loophole being exposed in a way that people said would definitely happen, and it's obviously happening. But if he gets away with it, then I would do it.
Okay.
I believe you more than him.
So you would do it. But this is, I mean, it must be so frustrating for all the people who constantly pointed out that this was exactly and always going to be the end point of these laws. Well, vindicated, but the point is to protect these women. Women in prisons are some of the most vulnerable people in society. A lot of them are there, they have come from backgrounds of abuse, and now they're meant to, share with neo-Nazis. It's mental. And hopefully Germany will have some sort of Isla Bryce, like what happened with the SNP, and have some kind of reckoning there to sort it out. But yeah, it's very frustrating. Our next question is from Chris.
Hello. So, why have pride flags been removed from a London tube station outside a London tube station this week?
Yeah. So why were pride flags removed from London tube station? Chris, do you know this story? Are you familiar? Have you seen these flags? They're kind of painted on the floor. And they're meant to make people feel really inclusive as they walk all over.
I'm not familiar with the story, but I'm looking forward to hearing what the story is, because I am gay myself, so...
OK.
But I'm not familiar with the story.
Well, first of all, Chris, what you've just done there is... You just told our audience that we've just given you that question to ask.
No, that's not what happened. That's not what happened.
It's all a ruse.
I'm sorry, that's not what happened.
It's all a ruse.
I asked this question because I'm gay.
I see. OK. So, Chris is gay. That's what we've established first. That's the most important thing, that we can move forward from that point. How do you feel about, as someone who's gay, he's gay, everybody's gay.
No, I'm joking.
Not that kind of free speech. Now, how do you feel about the flag? Because there was the traditional pride flag, just the rainbow, and then there's the kind of mess it's become with everything included.
I think we are at a point in our evolution where some of the answers lie in the past. For the first time ever, some of the answers lie in the past. I'm all for inclusivity, but I think sometimes now we can overthink things. So I'm all for inclusivity. I like the rainbow flag, and I've liked seeing the rainbow flag in various places, but I think now sometimes we can overthink things.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for example, I play a sport which is called airsoft. It's similar to paintballing.
Oh, nice. Yeah, it's very good. Very good.
And most of the people there are boys or men. And some people would say...
We're going to stop this story now. And,
sorry, all I was going to say, I will be finished in 2 seconds. All I was going to say is...
I've had that before.
Women can play, that's absolutely fine, but don't fight the nature, the way it goes, you know. That's just the way it goes. When we say people can't take part, that's different, but we don't.
No,
I think we can just overthink things now. I'll shut up now.
No, thank you so much.
That made me airsoft.
So, I mean, you've seen this story, and it was vandalised, and now they've basically said, look, it's costing too much money to constantly fix it.
Yeah, but it was only like 4 vandalisations. And when I saw this, you see the headline, you presume this must have been decades of it being replaced and ruined and replaced. It was just 4 times.
There it is there.
Do you know how expensive rainbow paint is?
Probably not. I mean...
So you can see the photo, you can see this is someone who's gone out with a mask 4 times, painted over it. So this doesn't actually look like the rainbow
Lawrence
flag.
Fox has the same coat.
That looks like, that's an in-joke. That actually looked like the trans flag. Not that there's anything wrong, but the point is that it's a different one. Anyway, look,
there was a progress flag.
We have one more story. I really would like to get to this question. It's from Brian. Hey, Brian.
Hi.
Hello.
Mike. What did...
Oh, yeah, Mike.
Sorry. What did a police inspector say to somebody in the Stop Oil?
Yes, about someone in the Just Stop Oil.
Yes, about somebody that actually got him the sack.
I know, it's crazy, right? So, yeah, someone got sacked, this police inspector. I believe he'd been working for 27 years. And, yeah, he basically said some derogatory stuff about Just Stop Oil people. And that was enough to get him sacked. What do you... I mean, again, this comes down to free speech. How much are you allowed to opine on some people you think are morally wrong?
My opinion is there are certain things that what I call boomerang conversations. You can have a conversation with somebody, and there's somebody round the corner that only half hears or doesn't like, reports it to somebody, and then before you know it, because I have been in that position, somebody's telling you, and as I turn around to them, that's hearsay.
Yeah. And is
But the
it
sad
your
thing
wife
is-
who was doing it? I heard that about her. So this is someone, police inspector fired, 27 years. I believe he'd actually written some stuff down about some comments about Just Stop Oil.
Yeah, I think he was on Twitter or X, possibly.
Yes,
yeah.
exactly, public social.
I think
and that's enough to lose his job.
Well, apparently so. I mean, I think it's very unfair. He tweeted, I could be wrong here, but he tweeted something like, "It's just posh special needs kids," that's kind of my whole shtick. So yeah, I don't know that'd be taken, but yeah, I don't know. It seems harsh.
It does seem very harsh. Right, next on Free Speech Nation, we'll be joined by the founder of Us For Them, Molly Kingsley, to discuss why her campaigning during COVID got her debanked. Don't go anywhere.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
TikTok chefs, Instagram chefs, that they put children off or young people off of cooking because it's so expertly done they can't do it. No, my young lad, he's 17, he is amazing in the kitchen. Oh, he is. He's amazing in the kitchen. And he gets it all off TikTok. He comes down, he can put burgers, wraps, stews, curries, sauces, and the smells in the kitchen. I said, where'd you get these? Oh, just TikTok, I'm trying it out. And it's just amazing the things that he can conjure up. So for some people, it might be... it's an inspiration for him. So they're saying that it's intimidation. For my boy, it's an inspiration. They say it's entertainment. For my boy, it's an infomercial. I watch him doing his stuff. At that stage, I could do baked beans on toast and knock up a salad. That was it. But my boy can do all sorts of stuff.
It makes it accessible as well, doesn't it? Because lots of people say, like, you need an education to be in the kitchen, or you need to go find yourself loads of cookbooks. But you don't.
No.
You go on your phone now.
Well, I mean, like, all the spices, sesame oil. I mean, I'm amazed at the stuff that he does. So it's encouraging. All you just need is a kitchen well-stocked and have a go. And understand that failure is actually the route to learning. I mean, he's made mistakes, he's stuck stuff in the bin, but that young man, I am amazed at some of the stuff he does.
I don't mind cooking at all. It's cleaning up that I have the problem with. Dawn, let's talk about
Can I just say there are things called restaurants, by the way? Just put that one. Oh, my hell, I don't even know where the kitchen is.
OK.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point.
He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. I'm not sure if we need to start a new section called Conspiracy Theories that turned out to be true, because it's happened again. PayPal has admitted that they debanked children's rights campaigner Molly Kingsley after she spoke out against school closures and mandatory vaccinations. Kingsley, the founder of the pressure group Us For Them, had her PayPal suddenly terminated in 2022 due to the nature of its activities. Well, we're going to talk to her in a second. She's actually, I believe, in Washington live. But first of all, have you heard about the story? Have you heard about this organisation, first of all? Yes, I was getting a lot of emails during lockdown, and as my kids were out of school, I was getting ever more frustrated. This debanking thing, we've seen it with Farage, and it's now like they're admitting that they were actually going against people who had different ideas to them.
Yeah, they did actually put time and effort into researching. I mean, I don't want financial institutions to care what I think. You're not there to judge me. You're there to just, like, keep some of my money and invest it or whatever you do as a bank. I mean, I realise debanking seems scary, and then you realise it's PayPal, and you think, like, oh, how are you going to buy your rubbish from Etsy? But actually, it is a bit more fun.
Well, but no. OK, well, we're going to go now to Molly Kingsley, live from Washington. Hello.
Hello.
Hello, welcome. Hello, Molly. Nice to see you. Thank you for joining us. First of all, could you tell us, with your own words, what happened in 2022?
Yeah, so, I mean, as the Telegraph reported yesterday, we were abruptly debanked by PayPal. So we just had an email in the September of 22 saying that due to the nature of our activities, our service with them was being terminated. And it was an account that I held to collect supporter donations for us, for them. So it was a bit of a shock, really, and quite stressful. And, of course, about 6 months or a year after that, it came to light we'd also been monitored by the counter-disinformation unit.
Yeah, so, and now you've got them to admit that this is what happened and why they did so.
Yeah, I mean, it's taken, what we now, 2025, so 2 years, over 2 years to get anything out of them. So, as you would expect at the time, we were quite shocked and went back to them and said, why? They didn't really tell us anything then. We did learn at the same time, if you remember, the Free Speech Union, so Toby Young's organisation, and a few other accounts, Law or Fiction, one of the legal accounts that had been also questioning certain lockdown policies. They had been debanked by PayPal at the same time. So it looked to be, to do with that, possibly coordinated, but they didn't really give us anything else. In the end, a large group of parliamentarians intervened, and the Financial Conduct Authority also got involved. So the account was reinstated a few weeks later. But obviously there was an almighty press furore about free speech and debanking in the meantime. And really, we've just been trying to get information ever since, because we don't think it is right so that organisations should be able to be debanked for undisclosed, secret, seemingly political motivations, which is what we thought had happened to us. And these documents, which have been teased out through pre-action legal proceedings, seem to indicate that we were right.
Yeah. So, I mean, your terrible opinions have been since vindicated, right?
Yeah, I mean, yes. So in particular, and I should say, actually, we still don't think that we have the full information from PayPal. So they have given us a very, well, it looks to be a very partial response. It's not clear whether PayPal were acting of their own account or whether government may have been involved. We certainly know that government were involved, of course, with the counter-disinformation unit. That was a government unit. So it's not a complete stretch to imagine that there may have been pressure on payment providers to censor, people that were taking a dissident lockdown stance. But as you say, what we were saying at the time has been proved absolutely correct. I think I'm right in saying on all our campaigns. So we argued against school closures, we argued against the masking of children, and we questioned the rollout of the vaccination to children. Now, certainly in respect of the first of those, it is now, I think, beyond any doubt that school closures and masking of children was just disastrously harmful interventions for
Absolutely.
children.
My children are incredibly thick.
Many parents share. Yeah. But, unfortunately, they know the impact that particularly masking's had on speech and language. And, I think there are very few people that would stand behind school closures in 2025. So, yeah, I mean, it just shows, doesn't it, how fluid the concept of mis and disinformation is, and why we need to, within lawful limits, let people express opinions.
Yeah, well, it's terrifying that, first of all, this dossier existed on you and your opinions by a financial provider, but also possible government intervention and the use of financial blackmail. And we've seen it in Canada with the truckers. You saw it with Nigel Farage. Do you think exposing them is going to get this practice to stop?
Well, I mean, you can only hope so, can't you? And certainly if you look what's happening in the States, and in fact, one of the reasons why I felt it important to be in Washington for these, these few days was that actually it is far less about traditional right-left politics than it is about freedom and free speech and what happened during the COVID period for me, certainly. That's why I'm here. And actually, if you look at what has happened in the States, the exposure, which has come partly because there's a new administration, but actually also because people have taken the Biden administration to court and have been forcing out disclosures which have been quite shocking in what they've revealed about the level of the Biden administration interference in the state. And there is clearly an awful lot of concern and hostility towards that. It's people are saying here now that, free speech must be preserved. So absolutely, I think you don't have a hope of changing it unless you first expose it, which isn't to say if you expose it, it will change. But, you have to hope, don't you?
Yeah, well, look, if you do take action, legal action, good luck with it, and also have a great time in Washington. Say hi to Donald. Anyway, thank you very much for joining us. Monty Kingsley, founder of Us For Them. Thank you very much. Well, I should say a PayPal spokesperson said we are not able to comment on individual customer accounts. However, we base all reviews on our customers' use of PayPal services, on their compliance with our policies. We apply an objective approach to these reviews, one that is not driven by politics. Well, we'll see. I sell a lot of board games on PayPal. Let's see if it's still going to be there after the show. Right, next on Free Speech Nation, our next guest claims he was forced to resign from his job after 22 years because he had the wrong opinions. Find out why next.
Hello there, very good evening to you. This is your GB News weather update provided by the Met Office. Hope you've had a lovely weekend, though count yourself lucky if you have seen some sunshine. Most of us have been plagued by gloomy and grey skies, and this is continuing into this evening and overnight. There'll be some outbreaks of light rain and drizzle around, particularly for Northern Ireland and Western Scotland. Eastern Scotland, other areas of England and Wales could see the cloud breaking at times tonight, but underneath those clearer spells, temperatures will drop off and we could see some patchy frost around to start off Monday morning. Even if you don't see the frost, it is certainly going to be a chilly start to the new week for the vast majority of us. There could be also some mist and fog patches around first thing, so it is just worth taking a little care when you're travelling back to work on Monday morning in case those are around. These outbreaks of rain then will be across coastal areas of County Down, stretching into Dumfries and Galloway in the central belt of Scotland first thing on Monday. Northern and western areas of Scotland starting to see some clearer and brighter spells developing, and really it is northern Scotland that has the greatest chance of seeing some sunshine on Monday. This will be coming though with some showers that will start feeding into the far northwest. Some of those could be quite heavy at times, with some hail, even thunder in the mixture as well. The outbreaks of rain just pushing their way into northern England, stretching into parts of Wales as well. Otherwise, it is once again going to be a largely cloudy day. Temperatures ranging between 4 and 9 degrees Celsius. On Tuesday, we see an area of low pressure just push its way a little bit further towards the northwest of the UK, and an included front here will help to pep up some of those showers across northwestern areas of Scotland in particular. So again, it's a case of scattered showers with some brighter or sunnier spells here once any of that morning fog clears its way off. We've got another band that will still be lingering across more central and northern areas of England into Tuesday, but perhaps elsewhere Tuesday will see the greater chance of some sunshine developing at times. But it won't last for too long, because into the rest of next week it is likely to turn more unsettled with some disruption on Friday and Saturday. Bye-bye.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. I'm delighted now to be joined by academic and educator Martin Speake. Martin has dedicated his life to jazz music, nobody's perfect, and has spent the last 22 years teaching the art to students at the Trinity Laban Conservatoire of Music and Dance. However, last year, Martin responded to an email from the Academy who was asking for feedback on BLM and anti-racist policies at the college. Martin, welcome, first of all. Big round of applause, please, for Martin.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Sorry about that jazz joke. I couldn't resist. Please, tell us what happened next.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite an involved story, but basically nearly a year ago now, February, the principal sent an email to all staff and all students promoting his BLM, Black Lives Matter, diversity policy and stating there's systemic inequality at the institution. And I've been there 22 years, so I didn't really understand what he meant in a way. I couldn't see it. So I fed back, and you've probably read the email that I responded to is online everywhere now. So it's quite a detailed email, and I was just...
It's very reasonable. You stayed out your case, I think.
Thanks very much. I thought it was reasonable. But the most probably significant point was that he asked for feedback, the principal, and he's never responded, still. I mean, he won't, obviously. And I copied it because I wanted a discussion with senior staff, which was him, the head of jazz, my line manager, and then his line manager will be the director of music at the time. So 3 people, principal, director of music, head of jazz, and myself. And along the way, I shared it with one student because I talk about all kinds of things with students. I thought, well, that's what you're supposed to do in higher education, you know. So we were talking about the subject of race and jazz, and I shared the email with him, this student, but he didn't give it to anyone else. And we had a discussion the next day, and I didn't think any more of it. But he read it out to half a dozen students at different times. And the story I've been told is that one of them got irate and anxious and went into the head of jazz and said, oh, I don't agree with this email, Martin's email. So I then got an email from the director of music saying, we're temporarily halting your classes because a student is anxious.
Wow.
And I thought, that's a very extreme statement, an extreme thing to do. I thought it was an extreme thing to do, but it seems to happen everywhere now, in cancel culture, which didn't exist it didn't even exist 20 years ago. So what's interesting about it, I'll just tell you a few things, is that, first of all, I emailed, well, at that initial weekend, which is in February, I emailed the student I'd shared it with, and the student who was anxious. I was told he was anxious, that's what the word they used. And I said, how about you, the 3 of us, and the head of jazz, I copied it into him, how about us getting together and just talking about this and agreeing to disagree, or me clarifying what I'm saying?
Like adults.
Exactly. But my whole feeling about the whole year has been there's been no adults in a discussion. There's been no discussion, but there's been no adults in the institution, really.
Well, your leadership, it sounds like your leadership has failed to do their job, which is to be leaders, to step up and explain that people are allowed to have different opinions on these matters. People are also allowed to be upset, but that doesn't mean that you lose your job. I should explain, and I don't think it... just to give some context here, you come from very much an anti-racist background. You know, you've been arrested, you know, in the past.
Protesting against racism as a kid,
you know, so...
And the National Front were there when I was... You're not old enough, probably, but when I was young, the National Front were quite big, actually, in England, and I went to protest against them and got arrested,
And I think that's the thing, is that so many people who don't necessarily understand these particular issues, and if you take a point against Black Lives Matter as an organisation, and also some of the ideology, the Marxist ideology, in terms of defunding the police, or you know, somehow you're a racist. But really, of course, so much of that ideology actually becomes racist in and of itself. It's a hard thing for people who are just... I think partly it's maybe your leadership. I don't want to speak for them necessarily, but just wanting an easy life, but also just not wanting to read into this much more, and just it's easier just to label someone, right?
I think you're right, but also there's a bigger picture to it, unfortunately, because in 2021, Black Lives in Music, which is a separate... It's not Black Lives Matter, but it's Black Lives in Music, was formed out... Seems like it came out of the whole George Floyd incident, but in this country, Black Lives in Music, the idea of promoting black musicians in music. And the first conservatoire, I think, that they collaborated with was Trinity Laban. So this is part of the picture. So that the ideology that we're talking about here was being promoted from then. And it's very sad for me, the whole thing, actually. You know, I'm not angry with people particularly. It's just the sadness of it. Why couldn't we resolve that? You would never have heard about it. We wouldn't be talking about it. 4 people who could have got in a room. The students, those 2 students I mentioned earlier, were up for doing that. This is the very interesting thing. And the college said, no, we don't want you to speak to students before you speak to us. So I went into a meeting and they said, we insist you send that email to all students.
Wow.
Now, I'm wondering why they want... I'm wondering at the time, why do they want to do that? I think to exacerbate a situation.
OK.
I was fine about talking about the issues with students, but first of all, I wanted to do it with senior staff, 4 people. Then I could have done it with those 2 students, the one I shared it with, the one who was anxious. And then we could have put it out to everyone. Yeah. But as you know, what happened, probably everyone knows now, is that the students received it and then put it on social media. Well, certain students, who knows who it was, put it on social media. And then once something's on social media that's not very nuanced, i.e. just my email, because the context of it was that, this is very interesting as well, 2 years before, 2022, the principal sent another email to all staff and students promoting free speech, which I thought, wow, that's the best email he's ever sent. And I logged it. I thought, wow, that's very impressive. Having mutual toleration of challenging ideas, conflicting ideas. So I thought, OK, well, this has given me the opportunity to write what I said in a year.
Well, it's easy to say it, but to follow through and actually do it.
Well, you know what it is. It's, yeah, you can have free speech, but only on these things, not on this challenging subject.
So now the situation, and it's not just you're working as a teacher, right? Also, I believe you had an album that was due to come out. You're a saxophonist?
Yeah, well,
right?
I'll tell you more. You know, I consider myself primarily, I'm a saxophone player, a musician, but I've taught in higher jazz education for 35 years, including 2 other conservatoires. Royal Academy of Music for 35 years, Guildhall for 18, and then Trinity Laban for 22. So I'm very embedded in that system, and I loved it. I loved it because I love the students. I mean, they're special people, I have to say that. Jazz is not on the radio much, is it? It's a minority. We wouldn't be talking about it here if it wasn't for this case. So they're special.
Hopefully, yeah.
Special young people who are into the music. That's what I mean, really. You know, so it's an alternative kind of life, really. So that I'm missing all of that, but
yeah, friends, colleagues, decades of experiences.
But just I'm a saxophone player. I've got like 25, 30 albums out under my own name, and yeah, just the knock-on effect. I just quickly tell you about, as you mentioned, the CD release. Yeah, the CD refused to release it because of the social media storm. Wow. Then gigs were cancelled, and I wrote to the promoter, I said, why have you cancelled my gig? Oh, because we disagree with your email. Yeah, but I'm not coming to do a speech, I'm just coming to play music. No, we disagree with your email. And there was no nuance once again. No one's actually said the whole way down the line specifically what the issue is. So this word cancellation I would never have known about 20 years ago. Right? Well, but my life has been cancelled. It's on a lot of levels. The teaching, the playing, releasing CDs and losing a lot of old friends. Wow, it's pretty heavy. Actually.
No, yeah, and actually. You're being very good-natured about it, but
I'm trying to.
Still, I can't even imagine the impact that
no, it's pretty shocking what's happened. But sometimes I can stand back and observe it if it's not me, and that's very interesting. Seeing all these players acting in this way. But the other thing I want to say though is Free Speech Union have been amazing. They've been representing me, and the fantastic solicitor they've hired, Doyle Clayton, the company, and they are still kind of negotiating or waiting for Trinity Laban, I suppose.
Well, we have Toby Young on in the show later.
Oh, great.
But you have a crowdfunder, I believe, if I wouldn't mind just mentioning that.
Can I just say, yeah, so we've got a crowdfunder, which is pretty easy to find if you go to the crowdfunding website.
We've got it up there, so you've got...
brilliant. And the other thing I was going to say...
That's going to go up at least £100 by the end of the show.
Yeah, cash out. What I was going to say was that why I'm being able to talk about it now is because I've been silent for like 9 months or something, is because I had to resign in the end, in constructive dismissal. So there's 2 legal cases against Trinity Laban in employment discrimination when I was working there, because it was 100% boycott by the students for weeks. And then in the end, they said, well, we're going to give your work to other teachers now. So then I said, OK, I've got to resign. So there's 2 cases against them. It's very sad because the other thing about it is I was part of this musical community for 40 years and musicians are jumping in to just take my work.
Yeah. It's horrible. Martin, thank you so much for coming and telling us what has happened. I'm so sorry that this has happened to you. I think your attitude is amazing dealing with it. And if you're out there and you'd like to support Martin's case, please do support his crowdfunder, because it's a worthwhile cause and that's how change happens. Thank you very much, Martin Speak.
Thanks so much. Thanks.
Next on Free Speech Nation, are the UK's free speech laws crackers? We'll be getting the view from across the pond. Stay tuned. Thank you.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello. Well, if it's some winter sunshine you're after across Europe, it's not all that promising. There's a lot of unsettled weather around. So there's heavy spells of rain across parts of Madeira and Spain and Portugal with this area of low pressure. Another area of low pressure across central Mediterranean, bringing outbreaks of rain, strong winds and even some mountain snow. Best of the sunshine really confined towards Eastern Europe, otherwise staying largely unsettled. Bye-bye.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
This January, history will be made again.
Join GB News as we bring you full coverage of Donald Trump's presidential inauguration.
From the swearing-in ceremony to the celebrations, we'll be there to capture every moment that shapes the next chapter of world politics.
The best guests, live updates and unparalleled insight as Donald Trump becomes the 47th President of the United States. The inauguration tomorrow from 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
We were talking earlier about the issue of Siri listening to you. Well, it's not just your own conversations being sort of harvested for data, but it's a problem with AI. So what seems to have happened yesterday is that Apple issued a alert saying that Luke Littler had won the darts before he had. I mean, imagine what would, if he then gone on to lose, how that would have looked. I mean, obviously, because he went on to win, at least they got the story right, but before it had happened. So what it seems to happen is that the AI farms existing stories, and what it has done, that's the alert. We can see the alert there now, and it also claiming that Brazilian tennis player Rafael Nadal had come out as gay when actually a different Brazilian tennis player was actually mentioned in the original story. So what it does is you see that's branded as BBC Sport. What the Apple AI system does is it farms alerts that it thinks people are getting from the source and then summarises them into one. That's going to be my question. Into one alert.
It looks to me like you would assume, OK, the BBC are reporting this.
Absolutely.
So the BBC News might be saying something else.
So it could happen to any news organisation.
This has highlighted a massive issue. I mean, having editorial judgment and quality control, because if this is going on, it's just contributing to the flow of misinformation. Yes. And we know that this is a problem on social media, people reporting false things. But if it seems to come from trusted news sources, that is a massive issue in credibility. I mean, if you had something like Reuters, who's a big news provider, doing this, you could hold people accountable, you could make changes, but when it's the AI doing it, I mean, what do? You're going to have to reprogram it in some way.
And if you just lost control, if you're a news source, you've lost control of what goes out, because it basically farms it, puts your logo on it and sends it out, even when it's nonsense.
GB News, the People's Channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here
We do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Josh Howie. Sometimes it takes an outsider to clearly see how bad a situation is. So when we ask if free speech laws in this country are insane, and my next guest agrees, it should be cause for concern. Greg Lukianoff is the president of the US's Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, and a few weeks ago he sat down with the magazine Spite. He explosively claimed that the UK is gripped by a nationwide Stockholm syndrome, and we are not used to laws which he claims are insane. And we're delighted that Greg is joining us now to find out more from him. Greg, welcome to the show. Hello.
Thanks for having me. And I'm not entirely an outsider. My mother's British, and I actually spent a lot of time there as a kid.
Oh, really? Well, so to your mind, what is going on in the UK with free speech then?
It was, you guys used to laugh at the United States for our political correctness, like back when I used to go back.
All the time.
Yeah. And now you're arresting people. And last time I was in London, last October, I was getting like, well, it's not that bad. What people say is pretty offensive to get them arrested. I'm like, that's insane. Like, as soon as you actually have a situation in which the offensiveness of your speech is actually what gets you arrested, you do not have free speech anymore. As soon as you're arresting people for it. I made the point in that video that in the first Red Scare in the United States, about 4,000 people were arrested. That's fewer people than were arrested for offensive comments on the internet in 2015 and 2016. And we were actually facing a genuine crisis in the first Red Scare. So I think that Britain has adapted to a level of censorship and speech policing that I wouldn't have believed 10 years ago.
Yeah, well, I mean, how did Britain get into this situation from your perspective?
I think one of the things that makes Europeans and Americans different is that Americans have never thought of ourselves really as a people. We are we're 50 different people. We're 100,000 different people. People from Boston never thought they were like people from Richmond, like they're people from California, God forbid. I do think that Europe sometimes has an idea that there's a modal Brit or a modal French person or a modal German, and that person has preferences, it has speech that it thinks goes beyond the pale, and that should be enforced as some kind of norm. I think this has always been to some degree an illusion, but it create a situation in which you can get this idea that no right-thinking person could disagree with this, and that's a conformist idea.
I see. So you think, I mean, I got to be honest with you, I don't recognise that from where we are in the UK. I think that just like you're saying, there are different parts of the country, different classes. It's a very disparate society. I think there is such an idea as Britishness, though, for sure. But, I mean, the analogy that I might use would be this kind of the lobster in the boiling water, where these changes have happened kind of incrementally to the point where now we can't really see that the water's boiling around us.
Yeah. I mean, I think what you're calling Britishness, I call like a modal identity, that essentially there's an idea of a single identity.
But in terms of us getting here, can you identify any specific laws that might have been implemented that has sort of led to here we are now 20 years later?
Well, I think to a degree it's a lack of a law. I remember getting in an argument with Brendan O'Neill in my backyard in Brooklyn back in 2010. And he was making the argument that my mom used to make quite a bit, you know, saying that America is, that Britain, speech is better protected in Britain because you don't have a constitution. And he made the point that that means people have it as part of their culture and they defend it as a norm so they understand it better. And I was like, no, but sometimes when people panic, and that's what most of the threats to freedom of speech are historically, are moments when everybody freaks out. It's okay to have a law to hide behind. So I do actually think this idea that your rights are better protected by not having this codified has always been wrong.
OK, so one thing you've also talked about is group polarization. Could you explain what this phenomenon is?
Group polarization is a very well documented social fact in social science, that essentially if you get people who agree with each other, talking to each other exclusively, they get more radicalized in the direction of the group. And this can apply to either right or left. And when you censor people, you're not changing their mind. You're just encouraging them to talk to people they already agree with, and it leads to runaway polarization. It's incredibly predictable, but we don't seem to care at some level.
Do you think that that has been implemented, or it's gotten further because of social media, in that those algorithms encouraged us to, or certainly before arguably Elon Musk took over something like Twitter or X, where the bubble kind of got reinforced? And now what we're seeing is the bubbles are broken down, and people are kind of freaking out about it. Certainly people on the left or progressive people.
Yeah, I mean, group polarization was happening before social media. When you look at the United States, for example, people were increasingly moving into physical neighborhoods that were less politically diverse than they used to be. And I suspect the same thing was happening in Europe. But once you add to it the extra layer of being able to surround yourself 24 hours a day just with people who agree with you, and then make people not actually say what they think on certain issues, forcing them to only talk to people they agree with, things get a lot worse.
Because it seems like now when someone is confronted with an opinion that they don't agree with, it's almost like they perceive it to be some kind of physical attack. That's why they're talking about, you know, hurty words. It's like people have lost the ability to disagree or to hear disagreement.
Well, what's interesting about it is my Substack is called The Eternally Radical Idea, because my point is that free speech is always a radical idea in every generation, because in every generation, people rise to oppose freedom of speech. And usually the people opposing freedom of speech are on the winning side. We are lucky enough that we grew up at a time where that free speech seemed to be on the winning side, at least for a while. It had a nice winning streak. So to a degree, when people make the argument that speech is violence, they don't seem to they think they're making a sophisticated new argument. I'm like, you're making an ancient argument. This is what every society prior to the recent past actually believed, and it's a massive step backwards.
Okay, so do you think that that's the way, in this generation, the best way that we're actually going to get out of the situation, certainly in the UK?
There's no single solution, honestly, and it's a thorny, sticky problem, and I think that we need to be thinking big on how we actually fix it. But I do think that once you actually have a situation in which even the term free speech is stigmatized, you're in a lot of trouble, and it's very hard to come back from that.
All right, well, thank you very much. Greg Lukianoff, president of the US's Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression. Thank you for joining us. Hope you enjoyed that Red Bull. That is the end of the first hour on Free Speech Nation, but don't go away, because there's lots more to come between now and 9 o'clock, including Toby Young on the latest battles for the Free Speech Union. See you in a second.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, very good evening to you. This is your GB News weather update provided by the Met Office. Hope you've had a lovely weekend, though count yourself lucky if you have seen some sunshine. Most of us have been plagued by gloomy and grey skies, and this is continuing into this evening and overnight. There'll be some outbreaks of light rain and drizzle around, particularly for Northern Ireland and Western Scotland. Eastern Scotland, other areas of England and Wales could see the cloud breaking at times tonight, but underneath those clearer spells, temperatures will drop off and we could see some patchy frost around to start off Monday morning. Even if you don't see the frost, it is certainly going to be a chilly start to the new week for the vast majority of us. There could be also some mist and fog patches around first thing, so it is just worth taking a little care when you're travelling back to work on Monday morning in case those are around. These outbreaks of rain then will be across coastal areas of County Down, stretching into Dumfries and Galloway in the central belt of Scotland first thing on Monday. Northern and western areas of Scotland starting to see some clearer and brighter spells developing, and really it is northern Scotland that has the greatest chance of seeing some sunshine on Monday. This will be coming though with some showers that will start feeding into the far northwest. Some of those could be quite heavy at times, with some hail, even thunder in the mixture as well. The outbreaks of rain just pushing their way into northern England, stretching into parts of Wales as well. Otherwise, it is once again going to be a largely cloudy day. Temperatures ranging between 4 and 9 degrees Celsius. On Tuesday, we see an area of low pressure just push its way a little bit further towards the northwest of the UK, and an included front here will help to pep up some of those showers across northwestern areas of Scotland in particular. So again, it's a case of scattered showers with some brighter or sunnier spells here once any of that morning fog clears its way off. We've got another band that will still be lingering across more central and northern areas of England into Tuesday, but perhaps elsewhere Tuesday will see the greater chance of some sunshine developing at times. But it won't last for too long, because into the rest of next week it is likely to turn more unsettled with some disruption on Friday and Saturday. Bye-bye.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
There's just 2 weeks left to grab your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far. £50,000 in tax-free cash. How would you react if you won?
Oh my God.
That's a big surprise.
Amazing, just the best feeling ever.
I'm in shock. That is absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Have you noticed that more and more stores are closing? Well, last year, apparently 13,000 stores closed for the last time on the high street.
Well, experts warn the worst is still to come for our small businesses.
Well, let's talk to retail expert Jeremy Baker. Good morning to you, Jeremy. How bad is it and what can be done?
Well, nothing can be done about it. Retail is like that. It's a boom and bust operation. So last year, let's say you had a shop and it was booming. This year, the consumer can just change their mind. They don't need to come back to your shop ever again.
Well, it is sad, Jeremy, because our high streets are the beating heart of our communities, aren't they? And for many people, I know I can relate to my high street, it is such a depressing sight, walking down there and seeing them all boarded up and closed down.
But how often do you walk down there, boarded up high street? I think people move on to something else. The online world is very big. Yeah. And lots of other things are very exciting. And so people, you know, the shop, I like to go to my GP in a shopping centre and get my tests done there rather than tramp off all the way to the GP, for example. And children could go to little schools in the high street. I've seen that happen already. So lots of things could happen to the high street. It could be much more social centre. Much more kind of like pubs, coffee shops, all that. Charities. I don't see anything wrong with charities taking over, but the idea of this shop-centred high street finished, that's gone. Never coming back. Goodbye. It's not sad, it's just life.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Plenty more still to come on Free Speech Nation this week, including Toby Young and the Free Speech Union's latest battles, and David Oldroyd-Bolt's roundup of this month's Culture and Art, plus why going to the pub may never be the same. But first, let's get some news from Tatiana Sanchez.
Josh, thank you. The top stories. The Prime Minister says the release of 3 hostages from Hamas captivity, including British citizen Emily Damari, is wonderful news after months of agony for them and their families. Foreign Secretary David Lammy also welcomed the release, saying our thoughts are also with those still waiting to be reunited with their loved ones. Earlier today, the Red Cross said they were all in good health. Emily's mother has thanked everyone who never stopped fighting for her throughout this horrendous ordeal. She says her daughter is finally home. A photograph of the two of them has been posted on X. There were chaotic scenes in Gaza City as the 3 female hostages were released after more than 470 days in captivity. Along with the 28-year-olds released today are 2 other named hostages, 24-year-old Romy Gonen and 31-year-old Doron Steinbrecher, who was also freed. The Israeli Prime Minister's office says 4 other living hostages are to be released in the coming days. As the hostages were released after 15 long months, there were cheers and tears from crowds in Tel Aviv. There are still many others yet to be released at a later stage. In response to the ceasefire being enacted earlier today, terror group Hamas fighters gathered in Gaza in order to celebrate. Videos released from the region show members of the Hamas armed wing chanting and celebrating as the delayed truce came into effect this morning. Aid trucks have been entering into Gaza since the ceasefire was enacted. Displaced Palestinians have now begun returning to their homes, and 90 Palestinians are due to be released today. Thousands of Donald Trump supporters waited for hours in the cold and rain to attend his victory rally taking place today, a day before the president-elect returns to the White House. The soon-to-be 47th president arrived in Washington late last night with his wife Melania ahead of his inauguration tomorrow. Trump is hosting a Make America Great Again rally in downtown Washington, although a counter-rally also took place yesterday with thousands attending to protest the incoming president. Trump also placed a wreath first at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier at Arlington National Cemetery today before making his first major speech that he's due to do shortly since 2021. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. More in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Josh Howie. We're going to go straight into some questions from the audience. Our first question's from Anton.
Do you think it's right for pub landlords to kind of not allow a conversation?
Yeah, you were straight in. I like that there. You was ready. I've got this question and I really need to find the answer right now. Thank you, Anton. Do you think? I felt like a politician there. I don't know what to think. It's very intimidating, Anton. What do you think? Do you know about this? Just to explain this to our audience. So can pub landlords stop you from talking about controversial topics in your local? Pubs could ban customers from speaking about their views on religion or transgender rights, even if only overheard over fears of falling foul of Labour's workers' rights reforms. The EHRC has warned that new rules protecting workers from harassment by customers could disproportionately curtail freedom of expression. That's how they word it, especially in relation to pub owners' philosophical beliefs. It's a little bit complicated there. I think the gist of it is that people who are working in the pub, if they were to overhear a conversation that they didn't like or made them feel threatened, then that would be enough to maybe get you barred. What do you think about this, Anton? I know you're a bit of an alcoholic.
Well, they'll lose all the customers.
That's the thing. That's definitely a problem. Yeah, I mean, we work when we're not here. We're out there in comedy clubs. I mean, that could arguably feasibly be extended to people working in comedy clubs. I mean, remember when Jerry Sadowitz got cancelled? That was because a couple of 18-year-olds working at the uni who were at the uni working for the Pleasance Theatre, they were sort of threatened, triggered by some of his jokes. That's what he does. And then his show got cancelled.
I mean, most of your set is an issue, isn't it? There is a strong chance that if someone's going to complain, it's going to be about your stuff. The problem, there's many problems with this. Defining whether something is offensive is left to if someone gets offended by it. In fact, what the previous guest was saying about the idea of a right-minded person, what they think, actually that is better than this. The idea that, because laws are set up that a right-minded person should think something or not think something, that's the defining thing. This is based on, if someone could be offended. You can always find someone who's going to be offended, someone who's this close to being all upset about something. There's no way to define it. I mean, even working here, some of the things we have to hear before we come on here, if you want to be offended, this is the place. Before you do headliners, there's a thing where we try and get all the jokes out that you can't broadcast. I mean, if anyone had to hear those, you'd probably need to get some sort of financial repayment for it. So, yeah, I mean, the good news is, the answer to the question is no, they can't stop you. Like in the full article, it explains legally they can't tell you.
So there is going to be a clause put into these laws.
Yes.
Is there?
Well, it's clause 10 of the ECHR, which I thought
clause 10, not
meant to
again.
hate it. Oh no, the ECHR, but it's the one that lets you talk about all the trans stuff.
So they do. So when you have two competing clauses, you don't think there's any way that this is actually going to come to fruition? Then?
No, they would be wrong to ban it because you have the right to have those conversations, but whether they fully understand it or not is the issue.
Yes. Well, what do you think about this, Jonathan? Because. As we were talking, as Steve was saying here, people take offence at stuff.
Well, I was offended that Steve actually read the whole article. I just like to get annoyed at the headlines and form my opinions based on that. He's got sort of actual facts to quote.
That's the headliner's way.
Yeah, exactly. I actually get enraged that I can't talk about wanting to, I don't know, some people say this is offensive. Josh has made a spreadsheet of every single female employee who works at GB News, ranking their attractiveness. Now, I'm not allowed to talk about it. It's not true. It's not true.
I would just like to say,
it was
as
Lewis.
I can see Tatiana over there, you're definitely at the top, Tatiana.
Why is she throwing at you?
She was. I mean, I know. She's not. Did you hear what we were just talking about? OK, good. Woo! Got out of that one.
Talking about how chicks are great.
Close call.
Yeah.
I'm married and she watches the show.
And it's obviously Sophia Wensler, for God's sake.
And I don't know how to use Excel. It is tricky. We'll see. I mean, they're always going to be like, oh, we're passing this law, and someone has to, someone comes in and says, this is potentially what could happen. But we're not going to know until it does happen.
Yeah, and who polices it as well? I'm not sure there's going to be a number you can call. Someone's trying to have a conversation about migrants. I don't think, we don't have enough police to stop.
But the problem is that these laws are used by people to promote whatever they think is wrong or right. And that is the danger. Is someone goes to their boss and says, this is the law, and maybe they're misrepresenting it, but the landlord isn't necessarily going to know exactly the intricacies of it, and is going to act on it.
Yeah. Well, you know how in pubs we have the if you're worried about your date, you have the ask for Angela. Now there's a thing where if you're offended, you have to ask for Owen Jones. It's like this new policy that they're doing. It's really quite clever.
Terrifying. Our next question is from Sean via email, and it says, why has a transgender teen gone viral in the US this week? Now, this is a pretty shocking story. A transgender teen with cerebral palsy has gone viral after posting about their breast removal surgery. Mika Leroy, 19, had a double mastectomy last month and shared footage about the procedure and their recovery on Instagram. Critics called Mika a victim who should not have been confirmed for a sex change because of their disability. This is quite shocking. The images are hard to see.
Yeah.
Behind a paywall.
And the... I'm not even going to repeat what you just said. People can rewind it at home and watch you get fired. Now, no. What do you make of this? Because there's the normal debate around this added to this person's disability.
Yeah, well, the point of saying this person doesn't have the capability to make this decision, it's not a disability that impacts mental facility. So, no, that's wrong. But then the rest of the debate there is still there to be had. I suppose it's the third slice of this debate about what should be available on social media. If this were timed slightly better, it could have landed during a TikTok blackout. No one would have heard of it. It's all about timing.
It's all about timing, yeah. I mean, Steve has a point there.
Even I'm surprised.
No, only that. But my understanding also is that their mother is sort of interprets for them, speaking for them there, and whether we've seen parents who are captured by this ideology as well, pushing it through, and they talk about, and I'm specifically actually saying there, I don't, because this is a biological female, and who is now presenting as a man who has had their breasts chopped off, and but also talking about how they were in this LGBT group, and it seems almost like what people have online talked about in terms of being groomed and ideology, and how this is a social phenomenon.
So you think there's an element of... Well, we have seen an uptick of cases, especially in young women.
It's like gone up 9,000% or something in the last 10 years.
OK.
So if we're seeing that, and we're seeing, and someone the question is how much this person's disability means that they're going to be exploited further.
And how much of it is just the mum misinterpreting?
Well, the mum, but also this person is part of this group, feels a sense of identity, and it's hard for teenagers to make friends at the best of times. And if this is an additional way of feeling welcomed into this group, I know that I've seen it from family friends, and I've seen daughters exactly being pushed down this ideology, getting into these online groups, and it becomes their identity, and then suddenly turning around and being on breast binders and saying, oh, I'm now a boy. And to see it coming through like this, they're only 19 years old.
Yeah, but 19's still an adult, and you have to take personal responsibility for so many things. If a 19-year-old committed a crime, we wouldn't say, oh, you're only a couple of years away from being a kid. So you've got the responsibility to not be a criminal. You've got the responsibility to make good judgments, I suppose. And I'm not too convinced by the argument about the mum, because it's not like the mum's the only person who ever speaks for them. Like, they're doing well at university. If there was a clip of the mum saying this is definitely what they want, and they go, then maybe.
That's what I was getting at. Yeah, fine, fair enough. Our next question is from Ahmed.
Hello, hi. So what does the panel think of Labour's new plans for reforming schools?
Yes, so yeah, Labour's controversial new plans, yes, for reforming schools. Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson is under pressure from Number 10 after Labour backlash grows over her school's reforms. A new Children's Wellbeing and Schools Bill will limit the freedoms of academies to set their own pay and pave the way for some to be taken back under council control. One government source said there is a feeling across government that the Educational Secretary has folded to the teaching unions as they have always loathed academies. Are you familiar with the stories? Have you seen? Because one of the arguably better things that Tories did is with our education, and now Labour seems to be rolling that back.
Well, I kind of I don't like that some of the salaries are going to get cut, or that's the plan. But I'm in favour of equality, so it's
a tricky one.
Yeah.
How long have you worked for an academy?
I don't work in an academy.
So, Steve, Labour's come out of the gate here, and particularly the Education Secretary, and this seems like a strange thing to focus, but it seems to have worked, is a point, because academies can choose their own salaries for their teachers, and they've managed to hire some of the best because of it. Now you have local councils coming in and taking back control.
Yeah, I mean, they have said that this won't mean anyone who currently works for an academy getting paid less or getting a pay cut. They've not explained how then these two mathematically incongruent things will fit together. Somehow the money will be less and it will be exactly the same. The debate about the national curriculum, it would make more sense if there was a core bit that absolutely had to be in there, and then you can mess with the top. I believe
that is the way it is, by the way.
Well, and in general, even the academies tend up teaching more of the national curriculum because you've got to get the kids through the exams. I do worry about a slippery slope where you end up with places that, you know, then start teaching creationism and stuff. You do.
That's how Hogwarts started. It was an academy.
Exactly, that's the big worry, that you'll end up with wizards. Somehow that's...
But academies have been proven to work, and surely it's just about, let's just do the stuff and keep the stuff that works, rather than coming in with ideologies rather than facts.
Yeah, well, it's a sort of... I kind of see it as government encroachment on the free market. You have these free market schools. They were doing well, and then...
That's exactly right. Final question. What could our police soon be using to track our every move? That was a question from John. Where are you, John? John, ask the question.
Spoiler alert!
But John, ask it in your own way.
Do we give you these questions? I'm starting to think
it's all a ruse. I know you're very passionate about this subject.
Ask it in pidgin English as well. I don't want to teach you how to do it.
Yeah, Mike for it up.
What could our police soon be using to, catch burglars or non-crime hate?
Thank you, John. That's such a good question. And that's exactly what we wanted to ask there. Yes. So
it's not the first.
You're very passionate about it, and I'm glad that you got to raise it. I haven't heard about this before, but next-gen biometric tools that can single out people by their smell or walk are being assessed by UK police amid warnings that lack of privacy risks turning Britain into a wild west of state surveillance. So you heard about this? This is incredible, right? New technology, how you smell. You can be tracked by your smell. You specifically, it's much easier, of course, and your gait.
My gait, yeah. There are some people on public transport that even I could track for a few streets, and so it's not that new. That's what I'm saying. The scarier one is the facial recognition, isn't it? That's already amazing, the technology. And here's what I think, right? I don't like it. I think we're going to end up losing some freedoms. I think we're going to lose the fight. Because whatever law you bring in, it'll be 10 years after the technology's moved on. And if you ban facial recognition, now it's smell recognition, the way that you walk, so you'll know a criminal, because they'll be the only ones doing some kind of like, oh, trying to walk funny. Oh, I don't want to be recognised, I'll do this one.
Like in Dune when they're avoiding the snakes.
Exactly, that's what it's going to be like that. So, and we'll lose the fight. Technology will win.
But isn't it amazing that there's actually no legislation protections at all at the moment that exist?
Well, that happens so often with technology, as Steve was saying, that there's such a catch-up, you know, even with AI and, you know, being used in whatever context, it takes a long time for the legislation to come through. They're years behind. They're years behind, like, the developers. They're years behind the first end users. And I don't know, would you rather be recognised for your smell or your gait, if you had to choose?
I'd just be happy to be recognised. And thank you so much for coming up to me in the street and all of your wonderful comments. It really means a lot to me.
Josh,
does that guy present Free Speech Nation? Yes. So, next on Free Speech Nation, after fierce backlash, are the government set to revive Tory laws protecting against university cancel culture? Find out after the break. Don't go anywhere.
Patrick Christie's Tonight. Weekdays from 9 p.m.
5 years ago today, Harry and Meghan shocked the world when they announced that they were stepping back from royal life in what has since been dubbed Megxit. Many royal experts thought the future of the royal family was in doubt after the Duke and Duchess of Sussex's bombshell Oprah Winfrey interview, their scornful Netflix documentary, and Harry's autobiography Spare that took aim at William and Catherine. Pleased to be joined now by entertainment and royal journalist Sarah Louise Robertson. Sarah, thank you very, very much. Great to have you on the show. So, Megxit, 5 years on, how's it gone for them?
It couldn't have gone any worse. I remember, as you pointed out there, Patrick, 5 years ago, one senior courtier called this move a declaration of war on the royal family. Well, this is a war that Meghan Markle and Prince Harry have lost. They are the losers in this whole sordid affair. And the royal family have come out stronger, more unified and better than ever. You know, she had it all in her hands to play with. It was all there to play with. She had the HRH title. She could have gone on to do wonderful things. And what's she now? A reality star. She's not even a working actress anymore. This new cookery show, Netflix have put it in the reality side of their categories. What a come down that is. We don't see them together in public anymore. She's doing her thing. She's going down the avenue of reality TV. And Harry's trying, I think, to do some of his charity work.
I still think that if he held his hands up and some things happened, that maybe the British public would.
He'd have to beg his brother. He'd have to beg his brother. The sticking point here is Prince William. Charles, yes, misses his son. I will say that again. He does.
GBNews, the People's Channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
This January, history will be made again.
Join GB News as we bring you full coverage of Donald Trump's presidential inauguration.
From the swearing-in ceremony to the celebrations, we'll be there to capture every moment that shapes the next chapter of world politics.
The best guests, live updates and unparalleled insight as Donald Trump becomes the 47th President of the United States. The inauguration tomorrow from 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. After fierce backlash, the government is set to revive laws protecting free speech at universities, bringing back the Higher Education Act in a watered-down version. The Act was first brought in under the Conservatives, but Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson paused it last summer with White House sources dubbing it a hate speech Charter. Pressure to reinstate the laws came from almost 700 academics, including their several Nobel Prize winners, who warned that many university staff had been hounded, censored, silenced, or even sacked for exercising free speech rights. Joining me now to discuss his involvement in reviving the Higher Education Act is the director of the Free Speech Union, Toby Young. Toby, welcome. Lord Young, nearly.
Oh, yeah.
Are you going to be using that? No, you must call me Lord Young.
I don't think so, no.
OK, so it's big news because it's actually been revived, but you were already taking the government to court, right?
Yes, I mean, I think one of the reasons Bridget Phillipson has decided to commence about 80% of it is because she wanted to avoid the legal challenge, which was due to be heard in the High Court next Thursday.
Yeah.
So our argument was that what she'd done in torpedoing the Freedom of Speech Act was unlawful for two reasons. The first reason was it was passed by both Houses of Parliament in 2023. It received support from both parties. It got royal assent. And yet she decided she wasn't going to implement it in full. And we think that was an example of a Minister of the Crown ignoring the will of Parliament, which is to breach a sacrosanct principle of our Constitution. And secondly, before she made that decision to effectively torpedo it, she didn't do an equality impact assessment, which she's supposed to do. She's supposed to see what effect her decision has on various protected groups, and she didn't do that before making the decision. Anyway, we thought we had a pretty good chance of getting a ruling in the High Court that what she'd done was unlawful, which would have meant either repealing the Act, which would have been perfectly constitutional, but which the Labour government hadn't done, or bringing it in full. So I think partly to avoid being in that situation, she commenced it last week. And as a result, we've now adjourned our legal challenge until the 1st of July. And the reason we haven't withdrawn it entirely is because we don't want her to think she's got all the time in the world now to bring in the 80% she said she can bring in. Particularly, one of the things the Act does is create a complaint scheme. So the Office for Students, the English Universities regulator, you'll be able to complain to if you're an academic or a visiting speaker, you feel your speech rights have been breached. And if the Director of Free Speech and Academic Freedom at the Office for Students upholds your complaint, he can then fine universities. So that's one way of holding universities' feet to the fire. But she said before she brings in that complaint scheme, she needs to enact primary legislation. She needs to find parliamentary time. And we're worried that that would mean she can effectively wait 2 or 3 years before bringing in that scheme. So we want to hold her feet to the fire by saying if you haven't done this by July 1st, you'll see us in court again. Because
this is very expensive, right, doing this act?
It is expensive, yes.
So, and then, I mean...
I should say, if anyone wants to help the Free Speech Union with its legal fees, which are enormous, we've got a crowdfunder, and you can find that on our website, which is freespeechunion.org.
Cool. Well, I was going to say it, so you saved me the business.
Thank you.
The bother. But why do you think she came in with so determined? It seemed like she was against the bill even before really she took office, or...
Yes,
I mean, that was one of her first actions, right?
Yes. Well, I think a number of theories. When she did it, she said she'd done it because she wanted to end the culture war, which was a peculiar thing to say and quite hard to understand because, you know, a big culture war hot-button issue is how to protect free speech in universities. And that had been resolved effectively by this piece of legislation. You know, the two sides on that issue, largely divided along party lines, had come together and supported this piece of legislation. The Labour Party supported it. They didn't vote against it. So that issue had been resolved, that particular battlefront in the culture war. You know, a truce had been declared. She effectively reopened it by torpedoing the Act, so it hardly ended the culture war. In addition, we think that university vice-chancellors lobbied her to torpedo the legislation because one of its clauses would have required universities to declare overseas funding. And English universities get a lot of funding from China. You know, universities like UCL in London have something like 14,000 Chinese students on roll. A lot of universities are now financially dependent on effectively being given money by China, and they didn't want to disclose that. They're embarrassed about it, particularly where they've silenced critics of China on campus, or where they allow effectively, you know, proxies for the Chinese secret police to operate on their campuses. And one of the clauses would have effectively forced universities to disclose the extent of their Chinese funding, and they didn't want to do that. And she said that she's going to look again at that clause. That's not one of the clauses she's promised to bring back. So I think that was another reason she was essentially kowtowing to the Chinese lobby within our university sector.
OK, well, how would you feel if, as you said, it was about 80% of what previously existed? If that was put through, would you be OK? Would it be a compromise that you would be willing to live with?
I can't say I'm happy about it. I would have liked... I mean, the bill as it stood, the Act rather, was already a compromise.
Yeah.
But it did contain a new tort in English law, whereby if you couldn't get any satisfaction from the Office for Students and you felt that your speech rights really had been breached by a university, you could sue the university in the county court. She's taken away that. That hasn't rendered it completely toothless, but it's taken some of the bite out of it. But I think it's better than where we were when she initially effectively torpedoed the entire thing, and it creates a line in the sand I hope we can't then retreat behind. So if, God willing, this government is only a one-term government, then hopefully the next government can do more and bring in the clauses that she hasn't activated.
So we'd already booked you on the show to talk about this particular topic, and good luck, by the way, for July. But during this week, you put out an incredible post on X from a screenshot from Wikipedia.
Yeah, that was extraordinary. So Wikipedia, which likes to style itself as being politically unbiased.
Like the BBC.
Like the BBC. And yeah, it's important that it does kind of present itself that way, because it's supposed to be a reliable source of, you know, of accurate information about a whole range of subjects. We discovered that it had described the Free Speech Union as a far-right organisation.
That's like the first thing it said, isn't it? It just said Free Speech Union is a far-right.
Yeah, quite extraordinary. Anyway, I complained about that, and I tagged in Jimmy Wales, the founder of Wikipedia, and it did get changed a few hours later. But I was shocked. I mean, how can it claim to be politically impartial and describe, you know, a non-partisan organisation, which is, you know, defended people from across the political spectrum, as far-right? It's like coding free speech as far-right. That's something only the radical progressive left do.
Well, this is it, and we had an interview earlier with someone from America who sort of pushes that point, that it seems that free speech issue is now tarred with this. If you're into free speech, then you must be far right or even right wing, as opposed to, of course, protecting rights for everybody. And free speech has traditionally been a left wing issue.
Yeah, I mean, until very recently, it was a left wing issue. And understandably, because so many of the civil rights victories of the past, you know, 100+ years, whether it's women's votes, whether it's the civil rights movements in America, whether it's gay rights, they've all been critically dependent on the right to free speech being upheld. You know, if it hadn't been for various First Amendment victories won by the ACLU in the 1960s and 70s in America, the civil rights movement would not have been able to mobilise, to protest, to demonstrate. It wouldn't have won the victories it did. I mean, free speech has been a far more useful ally to those who want to challenge the status quo than those who want to defend it. For the left to kind of abandon it now just because they're in a position of ascendancy is incredibly short-sighted. The ex-head of the ACLU, Ira Glasser, said that speech restrictions are like poison gas. You know, when you've got the enemy in your sights, suddenly it can seem like a good idea to impose speech restrictions. But, you know, then the wind changes. That poison gas blows back in your face. And that's what the left should be worrying about.
They should be. And in terms of what happened with Wikipedia, obviously you have a certain profile, so I guess you were able, it was easier for it to be changed. But do you think that Wikipedia is a lost cause? Do you think that it can get back to that sort of impartiality?
Well, I mean, we're certainly not the only example of political bias on Wikipedia, and we've been documenting it, actually, in the Daily Skeptic, the news publishing site I edit. But I hope that it can be rescued, but it's certainly been captured, at least for the time being.
Well, it's an incredibly useful tool.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's a trusted tool. And that's what people do go along to it to find out this information. But it is terrifying. And I mean, I've seen it in terms of arguing about Israel and Gaza and whatnot, and you see how I guess the model that it has, it all depends on who is making these edits, and who has the power there. And of course, so many of them are ideologically biased.
Yeah, I mean, I think the problem is that everyone involved in editing it is a volunteer, almost everyone. And as we know, the left are much more energetic about volunteering than the right. You know, generally speaking, people on the right have lives, they have other things to do. The left seem to have a much greater tolerance for kind of spending a lot of time in meetings, arguing, agreeing party lines, enforcing those lines. They have an advantage over the right in that respect.
That's interesting, but I wonder if it's also just a minority in the left who are like that, as opposed to, I think there are a lot of people who would consider themselves left-wing who actually just quite lazy, just want to think that they're good and just get on with life.
It is definitely a minority, but it's the most energetic, vociferous, influential minority. No, plenty of the people we end up helping at the Free Speech Union are people on the old left, you know, often, you know, old-fashioned, gender-critical feminists, women of a certain age. Left-wing, read The Guardian, always identified as left, but suddenly they find themselves on the wrong side of this kind of culture war divide because the radical progressive left is so purist and so intolerant.
Well, that's my journey. I'm definitely a woman of a certain age. So, anyway, so please, if you want to support Toby's work at the Free Speech Union, please do sign up because they do some amazing work. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Toby Young, Director of the Free Speech Union, soon to be Lord Young. Very good. So, next on Free Speech Nation, I'll be joined by historian and broadcaster David Oldroyd-Bolt for his week's roundup of the culture and arts and his tribute to the Oscar-winning director David Lynch. See you after the break.
Hello there, very good evening to you. This is your GB News weather update provided by the Met Office. Hope you've had a lovely weekend, though count yourself lucky if you have seen some sunshine. Most of us have been plagued by gloomy and grey skies, and this is continuing into this evening and overnight. There'll be some outbreaks of light rain and drizzle around, particularly for Northern Ireland and Western Scotland. Eastern Scotland, other areas of England and Wales could see the cloud breaking at times tonight, but underneath those clearer spells, temperatures will drop off and we could see some patchy frost around to start off Monday morning. Even if you don't see the frost, it is certainly going to be a chilly start to the new week for the vast majority of us. There could be also some mist and fog patches around first thing, so it is just worth taking a little care when you're travelling back to work on Monday morning in case those are around. These outbreaks of rain then will be across coastal areas of County Down, stretching into Dumfries and Galloway in the central belt of Scotland first thing on Monday. Northern and western areas of Scotland starting to see some clearer and brighter spells developing, and really it is northern Scotland that has the greatest chance of seeing some sunshine on Monday. This will be coming though with some showers that will start feeding into the far northwest. Some of those could be quite heavy at times, with some hail, even thunder in the mixture as well. The outbreaks of rain just pushing their way into northern England, stretching into parts of Wales as well. Otherwise, it is once again going to be a largely cloudy day. Temperatures ranging between 4 and 9 degrees Celsius. On Tuesday, we see an area of low pressure just push its way a little bit further towards the northwest of the UK, and an included front here will help to pep up some of those showers across northwestern areas of Scotland in particular. So again, it's a case of scattered showers with some brighter or sunnier spells here once any of that morning fog clears its way off. We've got another band that will still be lingering across more central and northern areas of England into Tuesday, but perhaps elsewhere Tuesday will see the greater chance of some sunshine developing at times. But it won't last for too long because into the rest of next week it is likely to turn more unsettled with some disruption on Friday and Saturday. Bye-bye.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point.
He's lying. Maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back to Free Speech Nation. Joining me now in the studio is broadcaster and historian David Oldroyd-Bolt. David, what stories in the world of culture and arts have caught your eye this week?
I saw an excellent production at the Hampstead Theatre of Tom Stoppard's play The Invention of Love.
Can I stop you? I didn't get an applause for David. That was my fault. I'm sorry. David, everybody! Sorry. I just wanted to hear about this play so much that I just went, David, tell me about this play. So, yes, this is in Hampstead. Sorry, what was it called?
It's called The Invention of Love, and it's starring Sir Simon Russell Beale, who I'm sure needs absolutely no introduction to your readers and listeners and viewers. The point of The Invention of Love is all about A.E. Housman, the poet and classics don, and it stars Simon Russell Beale as the older A.E. Housman, but there is also his younger self, and the interaction between the two. Housman has died, essentially, this is the plot. Housman has died, he's at the River Styx talking to Charon, the boatman of Greek mythology who takes souls into the underworld, and sort of reviewing his life. It's about his suppressed homosexuality, but it's also about classics, it's about the change in the university culture of the late 19th, early 20th centuries. There's a good cameo, as it were, from Oscar Wilde, who is portrayed by Stoppard not as a sort of epigrammatic fey wit, but as a really barbed character who almost seems to be blaming Stoppard for not being more open about his own sexuality, whereas, of course, Wilde was sent to prison after the famous trial in 1895 and went to Reading jail for homosexuality, essentially.
So you think this is one of the best plays you've seen for a while, then?
It's always good to see Stoppard, because I think he is the greatest post-war British playwright. The Invention of Love is one I like particularly because it's very witty. It's got that wonderful Stoppardian wordplay, but it also has real dramatic and emotional substance. Some of the critics have complained that it's a little too thorny. Well, just go and read the play beforehand, and if you don't get the classical allusions, look them up. It's not that difficult. I think this is laziness on the part of critics, frankly. But on the night I was there, which was Tuesday, the theatre was rammed, and everybody there, overhearing them at the interval and afterwards, seems to have thought that this was a superb production. I certainly think so. In the Hampstead Theatre, which is right next
quite
to...
intimate.
Exactly, yeah, and it works really well because it's theatre in the round, essentially, or at least demi. I was up in the gods. Every word was perfectly audible. Every nuance of the actors' performances was superbly visible. And the nice thing about the Hampstead Theatre as opposed to a bigger venue is that you really can be drawn in to believing the characters are saying their own dialogue, as it were, that this is not acting, but this is true performance. And it almost has something of the Greek in it in that way. I think it worked well for this production. It's on until the 1st of February. Very good direction, I must say, by Blanche McIntyre, who's done a lot at the RSC lately, Antony and Cleopatra last year, for instance. And I think it's always good to see intellectually gritty things coming on to the, well, not quite the West End stage in this instance, but it should be, and receiving large audiences.
Great. Well, something a bit more... I guess as an artist, you could identify his work so easily by watching it, and isn't that just that authorship marks someone out?
Yeah, he had a real sort of, as it were, visual fingerprint. The moment you saw a frame, you thought that must be Lynch. For me, he portrayed America, post-war America, in a much more interesting way than nearly any other director I can think of, with a mixture of great nostalgia for the happy days of the 1950s and almost an unflinching lens on modern America. He clearly had a great love for his country, but wasn't afraid to show where it had fallen from what I think he considered to be its high ideals. A wonderful cinematographer. The use of colour, I was watching Blue Velvet again the other night, is absolutely extraordinary. It has an artistic vividity to it.
Yeah, well, every single frame exactly feels like it could be just a still from a painting or something.
Exactly. And, of course, he was an artist who exhibited, as well as being a musician who had several albums of his own. And what I like about Lynch is that, like many great directors we can think of, he had his particular favourite actors. So in his case, you might think of Laura Dern or Isabella Rossellini, Carl MacLachlan, most famously of all, who was in the adaptation of Dune, and then Blue Velvet, Twin Peaks.
I've got a soft spot for Dune, I have to be honest. I'm a big fan of the books, but I didn't mind it. I mean, I know some people it's like a hate thing for them, but there's something to it.
Well, I think it's a difficult one now because you've got such an excellent new adaptation, but of its time, Sting showing that he can just about act to a degree, and wonderful music, wonderful combination of visuals and music and dialogue. I think it's an overlooked film in a way, you know, something sort of space operatic about it, which I rather like. And it is quite true to Frank Herbert's books, which are bizarre, frankly.
Yeah. And also David Lynch, he was quite an inspirational figure in terms of how he got stuff done. I mean, he made it happen.
Yeah.
And I think for any artist, he serves as an example of just, you have to just keep at it, and make it come to fruition.
Well, exactly. With his first film, Eraserhead, which he spent 5 years making and financing and trying to get distributed, you know, and it really only received great recognition because it was what they call a sort of midnight movie. It was what would be on at the end of the bill in movie theatres across the states and gained popularity and renown through that. He was unflinching in his demands upon himself as a director. And I happen to think one of the most interesting minds of the 20th century. If you read an interview with Lynch or watch him being interviewed, he had a fascinating...
We always learn stuff as well.
Well, exactly. A fascinating breadth of mind.
And he was into meditation, of course. That was the other big thing.
Exactly. He started the Transcendental Meditation Centre.
Yeah.
I just think one of the genuinely most interesting figures in 20th century and early 21st century film.
Well, I'm going to agree with you. Thank you very much for coming in. Ladies and gentlemen, please, David Oldroyd-Boyd. Next on Free Speech Nation, You Shall Not Pass, we'll find out what happens when vegans blocking a supermarket meat aisle came face-to-face with trolley-wielding vigilantes. See you in a second.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean all clear skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Hello. Well, if it's some winter sunshine you're after across Europe, it's not all that promising. There's a lot of unsettled weather around. So there's heavy spells of rain across parts of Madeira and Spain and Portugal with this area of low pressure. Another area of low pressure across central Mediterranean, bringing outbreaks of rain, strong winds and even some mountain snow. Best of the sunshine really confined towards Eastern Europe, otherwise staying largely unsettled. Bye-bye.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
This January, history will be made again.
Join GB News as we bring you full coverage of Donald Trump's presidential inauguration.
From the swearing-in ceremony to the celebrations, we'll be there to capture every moment that shapes the next chapter of world politics.
The best guests, live updates and unparalleled insight as Donald Trump becomes the 47th President of the United States. The inauguration tomorrow from 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
According to a report from the RAC, many drivers see speed limits as a target rather than anything else. More than 50% of us think it's acceptable to break the speed limit.
So this morning we're asking, is it time to increase the motorway speed limit?
Let's talk to automotive journalists Danny Kelly and Steve Fowler. Gents, what a pleasure to speak to you both in one go.
I think we should join many countries in the European Union that have 130 kilometres speed limit, which is around about 81 miles an hour. I drive to London on a weekly basis, and I think the roads are capable of handling higher speeds. I think unofficially the speed limit, without getting pulled over by the local police at the time, is probably around about 78, 80 miles an hour. If a Bobby's on the motorway doing 70 miles an hour, he wants you to overtake him. He wants the free-flowing of that motorway to continue.
So should we change 70 miles an hour? You know, if people are going 80 miles an hour, just stick to 70 miles an hour as a limit. Yes, you know, it's funny when you're driving along the motorway and there's a police car going at 70 and nobody wants to overtake. But if the average is 80, just leave it at 70.
All the gantries now are fitted at the time. So actually we could apply those rules, couldn't we, at 80 or even 90 miles an hour? And say, well, if the weather's bad, let's reduce it. If the fog's bad, let's reduce it.
Yeah, unfortunately, and I hate to use this phrase, smart motorways, but they're the ones where you have the adjustable limits. They don't cover all of the motorway network, relatively small amount of the motorway network. It is a limit. You know, it's not a target, as I keep saying to my kids. God, they're bored of me saying that.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. It's time now for Social Sensations, the part of the show where we look at what has been going viral this week on social media. Let's take a look at what happened when some vegans stage a sit-in.
Have you got respect? I asked her to excuse me. We're not moving. I asked her to excuse me. And she said no, so now let go of the trolley, please. Sir, she said no, so you go around. I don't care. You don't control my passage anywhere, okay?
Oh my gosh, that is terrifying. Oh wow, so what do you think about this? Extremist vegans, I never thought I'd see the day.
Yeah, it's weird because trolleys normally like veer to the left and that one's going the other way. Hey, old school.
Yeah. What do you think about this? What do you think about people taking it into their own hands to control people's choices?
That's the problem. It's having control over someone else. Like, if you don't want to eat meat, absolutely fine. If you want to avoid milk, it's up to you. But if you want to try and stop other people making their decision, then it becomes control, and I'm less into that. So I guess I'm on the side of the trolley.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think Lewis would do if Lewis, you cannot buy meat?
Well, Lewis would go to the reduce section. That wasn't the reduce section. I don't know. I think we've just solved the answer to the trolley problem. One for Steve. Read a book.
What is it? Yeah. But, I mean, what do they think they're hoping to get out of this?
Look, what did the policeman say? They're just special needs children. And that's fine.
But is this just...
Everyone needs a hobby.
Is this Just Stop Oil? I mean, this is vegans saying...
Just Stop Veal? I don't know.
Just Stop Veal. Yeah. I don't know, I just find this, like, as the next step. I think this is really...
Look, if you want other people to stop eating meat, you need to campaign and change the law. Whenever it's legal to do it, don't get in the way of someone legally buying a bit of meat.
Mm-hmm.
And do you think that if he had actually caused run over someone's foot, do you think that would be okay?
With a trolley, yeah, unless it had like a big
cow in it.
A full cow. If you were buying a pig with the apple in there, then maybe that is a bit heavy.
You know, the other thing, of course, is you could just sort of pulled back and then just gone around supermarkets. Yeah, well,
you don't know how much meat he was going to buy.
Yeah,
it might have been the full load.
Could have been
Steve talking about his full load of meat. Next up, we have an American woman who took her dog for a quick bathroom break. She came back to find her car being stolen, so she ditched the canine and went for a ride. Wow.
She all right?
That car is still going. Wow, I mean, that is someone who... Would you choose your dog or your car?
That's the thing, isn't it? Like, of the three... Not people, because one of them's a dog. But the three things in that picture, we all seem to think, oh, he's left a dog. Yeah. The worst criminal's in the car. We should be tutting at the person in the car, but it feels like, oh, you can't leave a dog.
Weirdly, it's a cat driving. So
Is this the worst episode of Knight Rider ever?
I've seen a different version of Knight Rider, which is something else. But, yeah, I don't know. What do I feel? We live in a degenerate society, and I just want us all to get along. That's what I feel.
That is the most cop-out answer I've ever
I didn't watch
heard.
the clip. I was on my phone.
Driving a car with this woman banging on the...
That's what dogging is, right? That is... over the hood of the car, there's a dog.
I've been doing it all wrong.
Wowzers, we pretty much got through the whole show without a dogging joke. Right, we're going to have some questions now from the audience. Who have we got first?
Sorry.
So who's our first question from? I believe you have a question? Yes. Have you got a microphone there? No, that would help.
Quick, speak into my lapel.
Yeah.
Hello, darling.
Hello.
Yes, apart from the fact that I only ever listen or watch GB News.
Great, thank you.
My question is, should Rachel Reeves be prosecuted for lying on her CV?
Well, that's an interesting one, isn't it, Steve? Thank you very much for the microphone holder there. Thank you for your question. Steve, I don't know about prosecuted, but it does seem that it's kind of passed by now. I mean, obviously, you've got this whole Rachel from accounts thing going on. But
yeah.
But at the same time, it seems like a bit of fibbage.
It's a bit of fibbage, but I think what we've got here is something else that pulled focus. So what you've got is someone who said something on LinkedIn and did a budget. And of those two things, one of them has caused a big mess. And it's not the LinkedIn thing. That's why we're not talking about the LinkedIn thing, like this budget for growth that's caused the opposite of growth.
So you think she deliberately did a bad budget just to get away from...
That's exactly why. That's what I
So
think.
no one's going to look too closely at her.
I mean, it was on LinkedIn, wasn't it? Who even believes a word of what LinkedIn said? They're still emailing me and they've not worked out I don't have a job. So, I don't trust them.
What do you think, Jonathan, about people misrepresenting? I remember when I said I was a TV presenter.
And here we are. What do I think? You're right, Paul. So what do I think about this? Well, I mean, what I honestly would really like is... Can you repeat the question?
The question is, should Rachel Reeves be prosecuted for lying on her CV? I mean, if you think at the implications it's had for this country, if she didn't have the necessary expertise, if she presented herself as someone with the banking experience, with the banking in the financial markets,
fraud, right?
and actually... Her background was in a more technical sense.
When I auditioned to be a Chippendale, I vastly exaggerated what I had, and then on the first job they saw, and they were just, you can't just lie and get away with it. I mean,
to that point, and I'm sorry to sour because we all want to do the pile-on. I'm sure the job she's got is being an elected MP, and then it's Keir Starmer who picks who goes to which department. So he's the one who would be able to sue. He's the one who would have been misled. She's just been voted in as an MP.
Yeah, but the problem is that there's always the Chancellor and the MP and the Prime Minister.
We vote for them, do we?
No, I know, but they are intrinsically combined together as one in a way. For him to lose faith in his Chancellor,
I think she should have to
lose faith in his own Prime Minister.
Yeah, we should have been for the budget, not for the LinkedIn.
She should have to do the work that she said she did on the weekends to make up for it. Do that training.
All right. Well, look, we're going to come up. We have a microphone. So, Ahmed, if you wouldn't mind asking a question, I believe you have a question, Ahmed.
No.
OK,
It's your question.
Are you sure?
Yeah, come on, okay, please answer,
Essentially, if you lie on your CV, you're committing potentially two criminal offences. One is obtaining pecuniary advantage by deception, and the other is theft, which is a dishonest appropriation of property belonging to another with intent to permanently deprive them of it.
I believe it was her LinkedIn, though, so I don't know if that makes it different.
Well, Josh, let me stop you.
OK.
Members of the Labour Party, were actually telling us that she was an economist with the Bank of England, not the Bank of Scotland.
I guess the question is, should she be prosecuted for this, or should she be voted out? That's the other argument.
She should be prosecuted, in my personal opinion.
That's fine, fair enough. Well, thank you very much, and well done for taking control of the show. You'll be presenting next week.
I'm not as
Ahmed.
as you, mate.
No, that's
all right.
Ahmed.
Okay, it's about Lord...
Please don't talk about Rachel Reeves.
Lord Young. It's about Lord Young, and he said, he kind of implied as if Wikipedia is run by is it James Whale?
Well, he started,
Yeah, and I don't think that's the way it works. It is run by an army of volunteers, and it's, everybody's open to go and change any page on it.
I know, but I guess the problem is that you have a certain group of people who are controlling it. Anyway, thank you for that question. Thank you also for joining us for Free Speech Nation. Thank you to my panel, Jonathan Cogan and Stephen Allen, and of course to all my brilliant guests this evening, apart from the person who talked about Rachel Reeves. And if you want to join us live in the studio and be part of our wonderful audience, you can. Please go to www.sroaudiences.com. Stay tuned for the brilliant Ben Leo tonight with Alex Armstrong. That's next. And don't forget Headliners. It's on every night at 11 p.m. That's a late-night paper preview show with comedians going through the next day's news stories. Thank you for watching Free Speech Nation. Goodbye.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, very good evening to you. This is your GB News weather update provided by the Met Office. Hope you've had a lovely weekend, though count yourself lucky if you have seen some sunshine. Most of us have been plagued by gloomy and grey skies, and this is continuing into this evening and overnight. There'll be some outbreaks of light rain and drizzle around, particularly for Northern Ireland and Western Scotland. Eastern Scotland, other areas of England and Wales could see the cloud breaking at times tonight. but underneath those clearer spells, temperatures will drop off and we could see some patchy frost around to start off Monday morning. Even if you don't see the frost, it is certainly going to be a chilly start to the new week for the vast majority of us. There could be also some mist and fog patches around first thing, so it is just worth taking a little care when you're travelling back to work on Monday morning in case those are around. These outbreaks of rain then will be across coastal areas of County Down, stretching into Dumfries and Galloway in the central belt of Scotland first thing on Monday. Northern and western areas of Scotland starting to see some clearer and brighter spells developing, and really is northern Scotland that has the greatest chance of seeing some sunshine on Monday. This will be coming though with some showers that will start feeding into the far northwest. Some of those could be quite heavy at times, with some hail, even thunder in the mixture as well. The outbreaks of rain just pushing their way into northern England, stretching into parts of Wales as well. Otherwise, it is once again going to be a largely cloudy day. Temperatures ranging between 4 and 9 degrees Celsius. On Tuesday, we see an area of low pressure just push its way a little bit further towards the northwest of the UK, and an included front here will help to pep up some of those showers across northwestern areas of Scotland in particular. So again, it's a case of scattered showers with some brighter or sunnier spells here once any of that morning fog clears its way off. We've got another band that will still be lingering across more central and northern areas of England into Tuesday, but perhaps elsewhere Tuesday will see the greater chance of some sunshine developing at times. But it won't last for too long, because into the rest of next week it is likely to turn more unsettled with some disruption on Friday and Saturday. Bye-bye.
We'll see a cold snap, which will quickly develop into a warm front. Boxed Boiler Repairs, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Imagine how 50,000